Deer tracking services, training stalkers and their dogs to track wounded deer.
Today we're going to take you through the basics of laying a kind of an intermediate track, assuming that you've done your puppy training, you've done liver tracks, etc. And now you're progressing that you want to go and put a proper longish track down. So today we're going to aim at something around about 100, 150 meters. And we're going to use pretty much all the kind of tools that we need in the future for our kind of intermediate tracks. So today we're going to use our tracking shoes with our cleaves already attached that we've touched on before in some of our previous videos. So just to recap, the main important part is that the interdigital gland protrudes below the baseline of the shoe, so that makes really good contact when it touches the ground. The other thing we're going to need is a reward at the end of the track for the dog to find. In this case we're going to use a cleave and obviously some blood. Now as you progress you need less and less blood, but that's a subject for later videos perhaps. So as we're going to start off, just get things together, what I always do, because we're using body parts and blood, etc., apart from the mess and the muck and such like, there's a disease risk, so we always use disposable gloves when we're putting a track down. The cleaves I'm going to put, which is the reward, I'm going to put in a bag for later on at the end of the track. And blood, just going to leave that there ready for now. Tracking shoes, these particular ones are handed, so I'm going to fit these on. Normally before each training day event we do clean them, but we've been out today putting tracks down for various people, and I'm just taking some time out of the day to use these. So normally they're a lot cleaner than this, which also helps spread the risk of disease. So with these ones, boot in, lock down. You also have the option to ratchet these up a bit tighter if we need to. And the other foot. There we go, nice and secure. And one other thing that we do need, that we didn't cover earlier, is a way of marking the tracks. So today we're going to use our Pro Track markers. And at the start of the track, we're going to peg 2 onto the bark so it's visible. And so we know that this is the start. We're going to tag 1 on underneath. Okay. So we'll put our bag on. We get our blood bottle. Also in our bag and bits of pieces, what we've got here is an offcut from the cleaves that we put in our tracking shoes. Okay, so these are from the same deer that are in the cleaves in our tracking shoes, so we're keeping everything consistent. So we're first going to form our shot site. So using our tracking shoes, we scuff up an area, we go through the vegetation, disturb the soil to an area about 3/4 of a metre diameter. Next up, using our cleave off clut, we'll also scrape a few pins off onto the ground as though it's taken hair off the animal where the bullets pass through, and we generally put a few bits in the direction that the deer headed off. Next up, we take our blood, we put a good squirt on the shot site. We also put a little bit on the cleeve on one of our tracking shoes. That will distribute nicely as we're walking. And then we also do is put a good squirt of blood in the direction that we're heading off. So we've done everything. We formed our shot site, got our shoes on, we mark the start, and then we'll head off. So as we're heading off, there's many ways of dispersing blood, and there's also many ways of putting tracks down. This is the way that we choose to do it. So as we're walking, we are also dispensing blood along the whole of the track. At the same time as we're walking, we're using a heel down method with the tracking shoes. So we're putting our heel down first, therefore pushing the cleaves into the ground as we walk. Now, as we are walking, we will also be marking the track so we can follow up later on. Now, an important part of marking is consistency. So what we are looking to do is to put our track markers on the left-hand side of our track approximately every 15 meters or so, if possible. Now, we're lucky here, we're in forestry, we've got trees, and we can use head height as a consistent method of marking. Sometimes you'll be on open ground and then you just have to adapt accordingly. So we're going to put one marker on approximately 15 meters from the last one. Good rule of thumb is if you go ahead on your track as you're marking, turn around and look behind you. And if you can't see the last marker, you haven't put enough down. So just tighten up that distance between markers. So on we go again, dispensing blood as we go. Obviously, if you're in open terrain and you're doing some straight lines, you can be a bit more sparse with your markers. You don't have to put quite so many down. It's not that important. One of the reasons that we put them at eye level and we put them on the left-hand side of the track is if when you're following up, your dog wanders off or gets distracted or loses a track and you go with it and then you realise that you've lost the track, having the markers in this consistent fashion helps you get back onto it. So you know when you come back out on your track that you are looking to have the markers on your left-hand side. And in thick cover, you're knowing where to find those markers, i.e. eye level. So this is more of a demonstration track than proper training, but if you've progressed from the puppy stage, something starting off around about 80 meters to 150, 200 meters is a good length to be going with. So what we're doing here is we're getting to a point now where we want to deviate slightly and put a turn in. Now with our marking system, to mark a turn, the system that we use is to put two markers. And we put these again at eye level on the left hand side, making sure that we have a good distance between the two markers. So from a way back down the track when we're starting or coming close to the turn, we can identify and prepare for a turn coming up. So that's our two markers making a turn. We use this system whether it be a left turn or a right turn. That's our preference, because once you get to this point, you know there's a turn, you can glance left or right and see your next markers once you're following up. So you know there's a turn there, and then all you have to do is look left or right to figure out which way you're meant to be going, if your dog doesn't go steaming off and have great success on the turn. So with that done, again, we carry on with our blood, and we're going to go about 45 degrees, keeping it simple for the dogs, nothing too tight. So it's a bit difficult across this terrain here. We're in forestry where a few years ago it was harvested, and where the forward are taking the fallen trees through to be collected was running backwards and forwards, has made some serious ruts. So it's just a little bit unsteady underfoot, but just take it steady. Depending on what tracking shoes you're using, it can be a lot easier in some shoes than it is others. So again, just taking it steady, heel in, impregnating those cleaves into the ground. Another marker. We're lucky here today putting these tracks down. We've just had a smattering of rain, so we've got lush green vegetation, we got moisture, and that's all positives when it comes to training a dog, especially a young dog. So this is going to be our end here. We're going to end at this tree. So when we come to the end, again using our markers so we can see from a distance, we put 3 up and we make them as visible as possible. So from a long way back you can see that the end is near and you've had success of getting towards the end. Again, we're using our Pro Track markers, highly visible, very durable, and they stick out really, really well. So we can now remove our tracking shoes. Which with this particular variety is a relatively simple operation. As they have quick release straps rather than the standard webbing ones found on most shoes. So that's those done. Now obviously we've reached the end of the track very successfully. Our dog's worked really well, hopefully. That dog needs an instant reward. So today, as we showed you earlier, we are using a cleave. Again, this is from the same deer that the cleaves on our tracking shoes were from. And what we're going to do, as this is a demonstration track, we are just going to leave it at the base of the tree. Now ordinarily, what I suggest you do with any find or reward that you have at the end of the track is to secure it with a piece of rope or a piece of string. We have had instances in the past where something like a crow or a magpie has come down, even on a small cleave, just picked it up and dropped it a few meters away, which can confuse the dog. The dog is looking and needing an instant reward for the work that it's just done. Coming to this find and getting that reward straight away is what drives, or one of the things that drives it to do the next track successfully. So we would normally suggest that you tie it to the tree with a piece of rope, stop that happening. If you're putting tracks down and you're leaving them for long periods of time, i.e. overnight, then maybe secure them in a wire cage or something, again, that's secured around the tree with a piece of rope or a strap. So that is pretty much how to lay a track. We're going to go away, we're going to have a cup of coffee, bit of lunch, and let the track age an hour or so, and then we'll come back with one of our dogs and follow it up. So we're now coming down to the track that we laid earlier before we went off and had a cup of coffee and a slice of cake. Bear in mind again that this is just like an upper level training track, not a basic, but not a full-blown experienced dog track. This is just purely for a piece of practice and a demonstration to show you the way ahead. So just one thing I will emphasize is before we start is that when we finished laying our track earlier, The important thing to do is to not backtrack over the track that you've just put down, and in fact continue to walk in the same direction if you can to get your scent clearly away from the track that you've just laid. So we're now at a considerable a fair distance from the start, the shot site, the hit site, whatever you wish to call it. So it's good practice if you can to put your dog in the sit or stay position. Go and examine the shot site, hit site, whatever, to give you some idea of looking at how the deer was hit and possibly wounded. We can cover this again in greater detail, but it comes to like shot site analysis if you like. But it's a good idea if you can get your dog used to sitting and waiting for you to have a quick look and examine the site without them interfering or disturbing it. So I'm just going to try it with here. The dog's pretty well fired up because of what's been going on today. Sit. Stay. You stay. So I'm now just going to have a quick look at the shot site. So I'm looking for clues like bits of bone, blood, stomach content, anything that would give me a clue as to how the deer was hit and what to look for when I'm tracking. So that's fine. I'm now going to go back and collect the dog. So it's quite important to make a transition from your normal walking leash to your tracking equipment. This becomes a trigger for the dog and realizes that it's not out for a walk or just routine exercise, but in fact it's time to start work and start tracking. So you just unravel your tracking leash and throw it out. Put your dog into the harness. Securely fasten it. Stay. Make sure we got all our equipment with us. And what I do recommend is that you wear a pair of gloves when tracking. Apart from brambles and thorns, if the lead passes through your hand quickly, there's a good chance you could get some kind of burn from the leash itself. So it's just general protection, PPE if you like. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab hold of my tracking leash. I'm going to take my dog Heidi on a short leash towards the shot site. Let her have a look at it, and then we'll take it from there. So we're now just about on the shot site. She's having a look, she's having a good sniff. She's figuring out where it goes, and then we give her a command, in this case, track on. Good girl. So we use the same command every time we come to do a track. And like I said, this time we prefer to use the words track on, but you can come with seek, find, whatever. And as you can see, Heidi's well and truly on the track. And I'm slowly letting more and more leash out. This puts her into her own scent zone, so I'm not contaminating the area she's working in. I can see by the markers that she's on the track. I know she's on the track. So gentle reward of good girl, every now and again. This just gives her confidence and reassurance she's doing the right thing. But again, we don't want to overdo it. So Heidi's just taking it nice and steady, nose down most of the time, taking in other scents as well as she's going. Good girl. So when we give these rewarding commands, i.e. good girl, we don't do it loud and we don't do it too gently, but just enough so the dog can hear but not break focus. Okay, so now we come to the turn. We've got our 2 markers on the tree. I'm just pausing slightly here. Now Heidi, as you can see, she's just figured it out. There's a marker by the tree. Good girl. Praise where it's needed. She's got bramble in front of her. She knows the track goes through there, so she's just working her way around it. We don't have a problem with that because the dog is still on the track. So again, we can see that she's heading in the right direction. Good girl. Good girl. A little bit of praise is also useful if the dog's heading up against cover and knows the track goes ahead. It just gives them a bit of encouragement. So we're almost at the find now. Heidi's got her nose down, the scent's coming in. Now there we go, she's zoned in on it. Good girl, Heidi. Good girl. Good girl. So I'm now going to go in. Praise her, there's a good girl. What you got? Heidi, there's a good girl. Look at this. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. So we now have one really happy hound. It's important at this stage to take the tracking equipment off because she's finished working. Now it's reward, fun and playtime. Good girl. This is where you must take a lot of time, almost as much time as you did on the track, rewarding and fussing and praising the dog. It's this reward that drives them and motivates them for their next track. So as I mentioned earlier, when we started laying the track, normally we would tie this find down with a piece of rope or string. And it's really useful here if you've got a dog, especially a young dog that's really excitable, that they can have a tug of war or a tug or a game with it. But either way, plenty of fuss and praise. This old girl knows what it's all about now. And she does love to chew on her cleave. Good girl, Heidi. So another thing you can do, apart from let the dog just have a little chew on it, is a game of playing with it, just fetching. Good girl. Good girl. Generally it's a man thing. Men in general don't like to praise or reward their dog and show emotion, but this is where you've got to make an exception to the rule. Good girl, Heidi. So you may have noticed there when we came through with the track, we were just following the track, watching the markers as we came through, making sure everything was good. What I strongly recommend is any track that you're putting down, going back and picking up the markers afterwards. If at some stage coming through there, Heidi had gone off on maybe a live hot scent that had distracted her or something else, we could have come back onto the main track where we'd laid it and know exactly where to find it and pick up again if we've got the markers there. If we pick them up as we go along, we don't have a clue where the track went exactly, and it makes it very difficult to restart and follow up. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Any comments, please let us know, and we'll try and make some more in the future. Thank you for watching.